Aishlin. Welcome back to Collection Cut Down. Today's video is on Adam's Rib with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. They did a couple of films together. They were an actual couple. This movie is a bit of a battle of the sexes type movie. You can see even on the cover it has the hilarious answer to who wears the pants, which, yeah, okay. This is about a married couple who are lawyers on opposite sides of a court case. Judy Holliday has a role in this as well, and I love her. She only did a couple of films and she was so talented, and unfortunately she died quite young, just in her early 40s I think, but she did a lot of stage work and she moved into film. She's terrific. She's very famous for playing the dumb blonde stereotype like Marilyn Monroe is, but I'm pretty sure she must have been smart in real life. I think anybody who successfully plays a dumb character has to be pretty bright. Jean Hagen is also in this, and she is most famous for Singing in the Rain. She plays, is it Lena Lamont? Somebody Lamont, who has the squeaky voice. I think that this may have actually been the role where she originated that way of talking, because she doesn't sound like that in real life. It's going to be fun to see both those women, you know, play off against each other, and also Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Like, they were known for their chemistry, and Katharine Hepburn, you know, noted feminist, so hopefully the script isn't too awful looking back. The movie is from the late 40s. Things have changed since then, gender dynamics in particular, so it's entirely possible that this will be really horrible to watch. I don't actually remember what I thought about this film the first time I saw it. I must have only seen this once back when I was watching a lot of classics. Back when I first got into film, I wanted to give myself an education, and so I found a whole bunch of like best or most influential movies of all time, or best films of decades and things like that, and I actually got a hold of as many of them as I could. I don't have them all on DVD. There was also a video store near me that specialised in more obscure films and old films, and I used to beg my mother to take me there to get some, and so I actually saw a lot of these as rentals, which obviously not really a thing anymore, so in many ways this is making me a bit nostalgic for that time. At one point this was considered one of the best romantic comedies ever made. According to the back, they do play a married couple, and I think I may have mentioned before maybe that when watching romantic comedies I do kind of prefer people falling in love for the first time rather than falling back in love. It's just a preference of mine. I'm curious to see how this is going to hold up, so I'm going to see you all on the other side. There's a lot to like about this movie. It is funny. A lot of that is due to the performances. I mean, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, they're considered the greats, and they work wonderfully off each other. Very quick, particularly with the dialogue. I really miss screwball comedies, you know? I wish more things were like that now. A lot of rom-coms these days are like, you know, gross out comedies or things like that, and for me there's nothing like witty, quick banter. It's such a thing for me, and I'm sad that that sort of subgenre has been left in the past, because I think it would play really well these days. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn weren't the only good performances in this. Everyone was great, but particularly Judy Holliday. She was so good in this. Everything from her facial expressions and her delivery, it was just note perfect the whole way through. The story is that Judy Holliday's character, her husband is cheating on her, and she bursts into the apartment that he's, you know, it's a love nest with him and his girlfriend, and she sort of shuts her eyes and shoots her husband. Katharine Hepburn's character is defending her, and her husband, Spencer Tracy, is the assistant district attorney who is prosecuting her. And because Katharine Hepburn's character makes it all about gender, so her whole thing is that women are equal to men and, deserve equal rights, and she kind of twists that into, into getting people to acquit Judy Holliday's character, or tries to. Won't spoil it. Because she's treating this like a battle between the sexes, it then causes strife in their marriage. There was quite a lot of funny parts in this. The dialogue in particular, the rapid fire back and forth, particularly the courtroom scenes. There's a lot there to laugh at. I also liked, which was quite unusual for the period, that it was quite clear that the two married people actually had a sex life, go off screen, and you'd hear them kissing, and it is very clear that the two of them are physically intimate. And for a movie made in 1949, that's quite rare. You get it sometimes in pre-code movies, which, like, the code came in 1934, so you get a few that are a little bit steamier before that, but they were quite strict in the morality of films after that. So yeah, I quite enjoyed that, particularly as a modern viewer, but I think that would have been quite scandalous for the time. If this wasn't a stage play, it might have become one at some point, because it did feel quite stagey. Few sets and lots of long takes and the focus on dialogue. I think it would have worked really well as a stage play in the best possible way. A lot of the time when you say a movie feels stagey, it's probably a negative thing, but in this I think it really worked for it. I'm pretty sure it was actually intentional to feel that way, because they did these title cards, like, in old movies they have the credits first, and when they did that, they had it, like, all the credits were coming up in a, like, fake little paper theatre, and they kept reinforcing that throughout the film, so they would have, like, that evening, and then it would be in the little paper stage thing. The big question for me was always going to be the portrayal of gender and gender dynamics in this film. I think it depends a lot on how you interpret the film, whether you believe that the conflict on Spencer Tracy's character's part is really that he feels she's not respecting the law, which is super important to him, and that's kind of what he states as his reason for not liking her argument, and he goes to quite extreme lengths to prove that in the end. I won't spoil it, but there's also reasons about, they have a fight about how he wants a wife, not a competitor, and all that sort of stuff. Maybe he doesn't want equality for women and she does, and maybe that's the true conflict. I think it is open to interpretation in a number of ways. It's certainly of its time, there's no denying that. And I was saying to myself as I was watching it, if that woman who shot her husband ends up with him in the end, I'm out. Like, no way. And they left that a little bit ambiguous, like you don't see any of them after the court case wraps up. But there's hints that they're kind of all a happy family now, which, as you can imagine, I was not that thrilled about. The guy, like, was openly cheating on her, he was abusive, and they kind of turned that into a little bit of a joke. I don't think it was as deeply offensive as some of these movies, but they made light of it a little bit. I feel like in some ways maybe they were trying to have it both ways, so, have it be progressive and feminist in some ways, and then, but kind of have the men win in the end, maybe? I don't know. I think I'd have to think about it quite a bit more. It's not cut and dried, and like I said, I do think it's open to interpretation. So the real question is the DVD worth keeping? This is a tough one. I thought I was doing so well. I was happy to get rid of some, and now I'm back to struggling. There's so much to like about this film. The performances particularly are fantastic. The dialogue is very witty. At the same time, it is a product of its time, and maybe I have a little bit less tolerance for that than I used to, but on the other hand, like, I think I am able to accept these things as the time, and considering that this is actually fairly progressive considering when it was made, you know, at least they're making strides towards that and attempts towards feminism, which, you know, would have been quite unheard of at the time. Like, I certainly will give it credit for that. I think this is one I'm going to keep for now. But like some of the other ones, I'm gonna reserve the right to cull this at a later date. But for now, there's so much to admire about it. If I want inspiration for a rapid fire comedy, I couldn't really look past something like this. I mean, I have a few in my collection, but I can certainly see why this has been regularly voted in the top movies ever made, and particularly the top rom-coms ever made. It's also such a classic pairing, you know, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. They're a formidable pairing, particularly in roles like this. I think for now, I'm gonna hang on to it. If you've been enjoying these videos, please consider subscribing, commenting, liking, any kind of interaction. And if you do subscribe, you'll get notifications for when I post new videos. If you're a classic movie fan, there is a few of those coming up soon. In fact, the next one is. It's funny that none of them showed up before now, but I think that maybe they just didn't use numbers in titles back then. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So what's coming up next? Well, I did mention it was a classic, and so we have The Adventures of Robin Hood starring Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. So an adventure classic from 1939, I think. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. But for now, goodbye and happy watching.